Hello guys, welcome to my channel for Cincinnati Special Vehicles. So, this video you want to see some cars were crashed and they're destroyed and cost a lot of money as well pay. The Corvette crashes on the truck. The Dragster, it crashes to the wall. The Wing Express hits the wall. The Delta 2 explodes. The Cigarette explodes. And etc. You have to see some of these videos where the vehicles are destroyed, some places were too dangerous.
Speed Corvette is on the run from the police. The high-speed chase began when an officer attempted to pull over a stolen car, and the suspect decided to flee. Now he's racing through the desert at speeds of more than 150 miles per hour. He's driving so fast the police can't catch him. Although two of the car's tires are worn flat, the suspect refuses to give up. But then, two 18-wheelers get in his way. The driver passes one truck, then dodges another. When suddenly, his luck runs out. Watch again. The suspect spins out of control and slams into the rear of one of the trucks. The high-speed collision shears off the roof of his car and sends the driver flying. He skids across the ground and collapses. Police officers immediately close in. No one knows that better than Lars Räderström. Stockholm, Sweden. While landing an experimental jet plane, Lars loses control, careening across the tarmac and tumbling to a fiery stop. Incredibly, he survives the terrifying crash. Knowing that the odds of this happening again are 1,000,000 to 1, Lars returns to the skies in an air show over Stockholm. But suddenly, the odds turn against him. His jet makes a sharp turn and stalls. The fighter plane smashes to the ground and explodes on impact. Remarkably, Lars ejects. Just as the jet begins to plummet from the sky, enabling him to survive yet another near-fatal disaster. Rim across the sky in the Phoenix 500 air race. Veteran announcer Gordon Bowman-Jones is in the grandstand calling the action.
The air racing was going full tilt, and the pilots were at it, dog to dog, out there fighting it out around the pylons.
With speed stopping 400 miles an hour, pilot Kevin Eldridge makes his move. But as he flies over the crowd, a trail of smoke begins to stream from his engine. Moments later, the smoke erupts into flames.
The fireball from the airplane was enormous. The whole front of the aircraft was encased in flame. And there was about 400 yards of flame and smoke coming from behind the aircraft. People were saying, "Jump, jump, jump, get out, get out, get out of there."
Kevin tries to gain altitude, but the plane rolls over and plunges toward the ground. Then, as fire fills the cockpit, he makes a desperate leap for his life. Kevin is free with only seconds to spare. Although he escapes in time, Kevin's ordeal is far from over. When he jumps from the flaming cockpit, he smashes into the tail section, breaking his neck, his arm, and both legs. As Kevin floats to the ground, rescue crews rush to him. An unmanned Delta rocket carrying a $45 million military satellite is about to blast off.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0. We have ignition and liftoff from Cape Canaveral Air Station of the Air Force Delta II launch vehicle carrying the new GPS-2R satellite.
rocks the Cape.
I just had an anomaly of the Delta II launch vehicle from Cape Canaveral Air Station. We need to secure the area.
More than 250 tons of flaming debris and rocket fuel rain down from the sky. The explosion occurs so close to the... A couple on their honeymoon captures a horrific sight with their video camera. An Ethiopian air jetliner is flying dangerously low over the ocean. Suddenly, the plane breaks apart and crashes into the shallow water. Just 20 minutes after takeoff, 3 suicidal hijackers storm the cockpit and refuse to let the plane land. Now, out of fuel and running on only one engine, the pilot is forced to ditch in the ocean. Local residents race to the scene and mount a rescue effort. But when an engine fails, there's big trouble. Farnborough, England. Brad Fowles is the co-pilot on one of the planes.
Everything is working fine at this point. In fact,
To land. The plane suddenly encounters a strong tailwind and speeds out of control. Pilot Bill Loverseed tries to slow down, but one of the propellers is jammed. Passenger Eric Lane remembers the desperate moment.
Loverseed said to Fowles, "The controls are not reacting."
The crew faces a no-win situation. If they stay airborne, they risk a mid-air collision. And if they lose control, they'll crash into the crowd below.
there just was not enough altitude remaining for the aircraft to recover.
You were coming down at a hell of a rate.
It was going to crash.
It was really quite apparent that we were all going to be killed.
The last moment, the pilot manages to pull the plane out of its nosedive.
The timing.
Speed records. He's one of the fastest motorcycle riders on Earth.
The sensation of speed is just totally unreal. It's hard to
On the desert floor, it looks like he's a sure thing to set a new record. But then, he faces the most terrifying moment of his life. Ron loses control of his bike and tries to leap off, but instead he's brutally dragged at 175 miles per hour.
The handlebar was shaking so bad I couldn't hang on any longer. And my thought process at that time was, I'm going to jump.
But Ron's bootstrap gets caught in the fender of the bike and he can't get free.
And I'm thinking the whole time, I got to get out of this mess because I'm going to get ground up. I did not want to get wrapped up in a 500-pound motorcycle tumbling down the lake bed.
The bike drags him 1,000 feet before he is able to free himself. Spectators are stunned to see Ron get up and walk away. The cycle mysteriously continues on without him. But once again, his bike starts to shake violently. Rider down, everybody move! Ron can't believe it's possible, but it's true. He's living the same terrifying nightmare all over again.
All of a sudden I hear a loud noise and I see a cloud of smoke. Pieces flying left and right. I know Ron crashed. I don't know if he's alive, if he's dead. I have no idea.
Ron is violently thrown more than 600 feet.
Quite frankly, I knew he was not going to walk away.
It appears that there is no move. Straight up. Then he pushes over for a high-speed dive. Wayne plans to pull up at the last possible second. But something is wrong. suddenly stops flowing from the exhaust. The engine is dead. The plane smashes the runway at over 100 miles an hour. Wayne is thrown violently against his harness. His head punches a hole through the cockpit canopy. The crowd fears that one of the best might be left. A century-old fishing pier is undergoing reconstruction. 650 feet from shore, a crane is being used to dismantle the last of the old wooden pilings. But a severe storm is moving in, with waves building in size and power. Back on the pier, the construction workers race to protect their tools and equipment. As the storm gets closer, John Toft senses they're in great danger.
My goal was to secure what we had out there and leave, naturally, as quickly as we possibly could.
The surf swells to 15 feet. Toft and fellow worker John Anderson are attempting to tie down the crane. Suddenly, a massive wave smashes over the pier. It slams the crew with full force. Sweeping Anderson into the churning sea. Anderson, in the dark clothing, is standing behind Toft when the breaker hits. Toft runs to throw him a life preserver, but it's too late. Anderson is nowhere to be found. The men search for Anderson, unaware that their own lives are in danger.
Account contractor personnel.
Just 10 feet away, a section of the pier sways in the pounding surf. Then suddenly, the towering structure collapses into the raging ocean.
This was the end of the pier.
The sound of the waves was deafening, thundering. There was a large creaking sound, and then it was gone.
Somehow, Toft and another man make it to safety. They dodge the heavy beams that crash down around them. Despite this horrifying close call, the men turn their attention back to their co-worker, who is yet to be seen. Then, they spot something in the water. It's John Anderson. A Boeing 707, a jumbo jet that can carry 240 passengers and crew, is on final approach. But suddenly, the giant aircraft veers out of control. The jetliner explodes on impact, bursting into a massive fireball as it rockets down the tarmac to a blazing stop. Miraculously, no one is killed in this horrifying accident, and no one is even injured. That's because this jumbo jet was crashed on purpose. Edwards Air Force Base, California. The command is given. Fitz guides the aircraft as it takes off and reaches an altitude of 2,000 feet. Then, he controls the plane on its descent to the hazardous runway below. The left wing strikes the ground first as the jet swerves and erupts into flames. Watch again as a wing cutter punctures the tank, releasing fuel and igniting the explosion. Back at Mission Control, experts are disappointed that the special fuel has caused such an enormous blaze.
There was some thought that with that kind of fuel.
The control tower warns the flight crew that their approach is slightly off target.
Just a little low.
The pilot makes the necessary adjustments.
Hold what you got. You're on glide slope. Hold what you got.
But he's still too low.
Just a little low for the power. Power, 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 power.
Then, disaster. Watch again. The Tomcat crashes into the flight deck at 140 miles per hour and explodes, sending a fiery comet streaming down the runway. The flaming steel wreckage finally comes to a halt, but it explodes again. Ignoring their own safety, the Kitty Hawk's crash and salvage team races. The substance is highly toxic and extremely explosive. The poisonous fumes threaten the lives of the firefighters who are trying to contain the inferno. But there's another danger. The tanker's internal cooling system has failed, and now the styrene is a ticking time bomb. The men use high-pressure hoses in an attempt to cool down the wreckage. But they're fighting a losing battle. Suddenly, the tanker explodes, filling the sky with a monstrous cloud of flames and burning ash. Watch again as 4,000 gallons of styrene ignite into a cyclone of fire, raining molten debris down on the helpless firefighters. Although 4 men soar and hits the ramp at full throttle, when suddenly, disaster. Watch as the rear tires hit the top of the boat, violently catapulting the Daredevil into the muddy river below. Matt is unconscious and drowning. Rescuers dive in and drag his lifeless body to the shore. The higher ramp has greatly increased his risk of losing control in midair. But with the large crowd waiting for him to jump, Matt makes a fateful decision.
So I thought, I'll just go for it and see what happens. Surely I won't get killed.
Matt takes off, racing down the dirt road at 70 miles per hour. But again, disaster strikes. Matt flies off the bike and slams into the ground with bone-crushing force.
An air show on the coast of Spain draws thousands for surf, sun, and aerial acrobatics. A foolish chopper pilot thinks he can do the same sick tricks as jet fighters. But he's about to get a serious reality check. The stunt jockey tries to dive in low for a swoop across the surface, but instead goes for a swim. Watches in the Imperial Sand Dunes in Glamis, California. A place for the wildest motorheads to rip up the desert. Scores of enthusiasts gather to watch each other shred. When ATV rider Trevor Thomas finds a massive jump, his buddies get some sweet shots on video. But as the hotshot roars into the leap one last time, things go terribly wrong. Trevor rockets into the air, right toward his friend holding the camera. He clears his pal by inches, only pile of parked quads.
Flying is never routine, but for fighter pilots flying at high speeds and in tight formations, even the slightest miscalculation can mean the difference between brilliance and sudden disaster. At an air show in Paris, Russian pilot Sergei Trespiotsky and his good friend Alexander take their MiG-29s through high-speed maneuvers. But as they prepare to cross paths at close range, something goes terribly wrong. After the two planes collide, Sergei quickly ejects. As he parachutes down, he sees Alexander's plane burst into a ball of fire. As Sergei's empty plane careens out of control, he spots Alexander descending in his own parachute.
Longest, most intense series of off-road races in the country. 9 punishing courses over some of the USA's roughest terrain. And superstar driver Travis Pastrana owns this event, having taken the crown the last 3 years running. Travis hits a devastating bump in the road. His vehicle rolls over and over. His pieces fly off in every direction. A racing official runs for his life as the debris hurtles toward him, and a wayward tire zeroes in on his head. An inside camera captures every terrifying moment. Shards of shattered glass shower the racers as they absorb hit after hit. They flip over 7 times.
This year, Mike Boyd is taking a dragster that's been around since the 1960s for a farewell race. It's the legendary Winged Express.
And this was actually the last race of the year, the last run of the year. This was it. After this, we were actually going to build a fresh car.
But little does Mike realize, this historic ride could be his last run, too. Mike lets out the clutch and sets the engine loose. But halfway down the track, the front axle snaps.
Then all of a sudden I saw something come off the car, like a frisbee took off, and I looked over, and sure enough, the left tire was gone. And at that point, I knew I was in a world of hurt.
With only one front tire, the vintage dragster is doomed.
At this point, I'm going about 160 to 170 miles an hour. I have no steering at this point. I'm in the hands of the car.
Mike can only hang on as the fabled speedster eats concrete.
I'll tell you exactly what I do. I was praying to God.
Incredibly, despite the hair-raising ride along the wall, Mike walks away from the wreck unscathed.
No cuts, no bruises, no nothing.
Sean scores a primo spot to film 2 headlining hot rods.
We were shooting on a tripod, which is mounted up on top of a ladder, so I can get a nice vantage point and see what's going on.
But this cameraman didn't expect an extreme close-up. The skidding sports car rides on 2 wheels and slams into a concrete wall. It flips along the barrier. 2 tons of debris flying toward the photographer.
The throttle probably hung up. Once the car went airborne and I saw it come down on my side of the fence, kept running from there.
The man and his camera survived the runaway race car.
Hold on, dude!
Tractor trailer is the latest victim of the harsh conditions. It won't be the last.
Oh, this is bad. This is bad.
As news cameras roll, a speeding truck jackknifes on a nearby overpass. It slams into a reporter's SUV and explodes. The fiery behemoth slides to a halt down the freeway. The photographer, who had just left his vehicle, narrowly avoids the onslaught of debris.
Holy cow.
Seconds later, the trucker emerges.
A helicopter pilot comes in for a close landing. He tries his best for a tight touchdown. Only one skid settles on the platform. As the whirling blades thrash against the pavement, they splinter into thousands of jagged pieces. The airman is helpless as his vehicle disintegrates around him. Outside, ground personnel are forced to dodge flying shrapnel.
Today, at an air show, he shows off his most famous creation, an autogyro. It won't be the impressive demo he wanted. A malfunction sends the craft plunging to Earth. In the open cockpit, Ken's caught in a whirlwind of eviscerating blades. Airshow gave him a tight shot of terror.
Holy crap.
A strong wind hurls a lumbering aircraft directly toward Dustin.
As the plane's taking off and the float's starting to come off the water for the first time, the wind picks up very strong, and then the planes turn straight for us.
With no time to spare, Dustin hits the deck. The plane's pontoons buzz just 5 feet over his head. So close, he can feel the force of the rotors tugging at his skin.
We should have been decapitated and killed. We dove just in time at the very last second.
Still reeling, Dustin turns to see the plane crash to Earth only 10 yards away.
Air police trained for river rescue duty. The goal is to reach a raft of mock victims and airlift them to safety. But this will be no routine exercise. The helicopter approaches the raft. A crewman climbs out on a skid. Suddenly, the engine fails. The pilot gets some lift, but it's not enough. The helpless officer loses his grip. The chopper crashes down right on top of him. There's no...
Alright, this is the end of the video. Like and subscribe down below. Goodbye.